Hello, Chris Green here with the Flood Insurance Guru. Today we're talking about your flood zone's changed. Can you get a refund on your flood insurance? Well, we want to talk a little bit first about the different flood zones and how exactly this scenario will play out. But also, remember that we have an educational background in hazard and flood mitigation. So what that means for you is we can help you understand your flood risks, your flood insurance, and help you mitigate your property against flood and other hazards long term. So today we want to talk about what happens when your flood zone changes. Can you get a refund on your premiums? What are the scenarios? Well, we want to talk about the three main flood zones outside the coast first, which are flood zone A, flood zone AE, and a flood zone X. First of all, flood zone A is going to be like a 500-year flood zone, and all this is a probability. Flood zone AE is going to be a 100-year flood zone, or just the probability of a flood occurring during a given time period. And then you've got flood zone X, which is the minimum risk zone. Probability for this zone is not really determined because it's so low risk. The benefit of being in a flood zone X is flood insurance will never be required if you have a mortgage or an additional interest on your house. However, if you're in a flood zone A or AE, it is required. So today we want to talk about your flood zone has just recently been changed. Can you get a refund on your flood insurance premiums? Well, first of all, in order to get that refund, certain things have to happen. The risk has to change. So let's just say that your flood zone has changed from an A, which is the highest outside the coast, to an A. Then what you want to do is reach out to your local insurance agent or the flood insurance guru to make sure your policy is rated correctly. Because if you were in AE and now you're being moved to an A, it could be a big difference in premium for you. And so you want to make sure it's rated correctly, and you don't want to be overpaying if you don't have to. Now let's say that you were in a flood zone A and you were moved to an AE. Then what's going to happen is you're actually going to see a difference in premium as an increase because you're going to a higher zone. Now where you're going to see a big difference is if you're moved from a flood zone A or a flood zone AE to a flood zone X. What this means is you're being moved out of a mandatory flood insurance zone to a non-mandatory, so it's not going to be required that you carry it. However, it's highly recommended because 30% of flooding does occur in flood zone X. But what we really want to talk about is, are you going to be able to get a refund? And how much of a refund are you going to be able to get? When you're moved from a flood zone A to a flood zone AE, as we mentioned, you're moved to a flood zone X, which is no longer required. What that means is the requirement's removed. So when that happens, FEMA will send you a letter. And usually your mortgage company, if you have one, will get a letter saying, hey, this is no longer going to be required. So at renewal, we're no longer going to require you to have it, which is great. Then they take the requirement off your mortgage. But more importantly, how do you go about getting maybe that refund for this year? Well, what happens is as soon as that zone is changed, you can go in and show that letter to the mortgage company, and you can actually either cancel the flood insurance policy and get a prorated refund for that year. Now, what we recommend doing instead is just having them re-rated as a flood zone X, keeping the flood insurance policy. Because as we mentioned, flooding occurs about 30% of the time in flood zone X. So let's just say you're paying $1,200 a year for flood zone A or $2,000 a year for flood zone AE, and they move you to an X. Generally, you're going to be looking at about $450 to $500 a year for that rate. So we recommend just basically changing the zone on your flood policy and keeping that flood policy. Now, if you choose not to keep it, what's going to happen when it comes to your refund? Let's say that you've had that policy for 6 months when this flood zone change is done. Then you're going to get 6 months of premium back. Now, here's the next question. You've had flood insurance for all these years. Are you going to get it back? No. You're only going to get back the prorated amount for the current year. And that's really important to understand because a lot of people think, hey, I didn't need it all these years, can I get my money back? And the answer to that question, unfortunately, is no. We just recently had a customer who's been in a high-risk flood zone that we helped them get their flood zone changed to a minimum risk zone. So we took them from that high-risk policy to a minimum risk policy. But the problem was they had the opportunity to do this for 20 years, but no one showed them how to do it. And once we completed that, of course the customer's kind of upset that no one ever showed him how to do this. But he could have had some significant savings over the last 20 years. So it's very important that you look at this every year, just like you look at your auto insurance and you look at your home insurance every year at renewal. It's very important that you look at your flood zone every year for these types of situations. You want to make sure that you're still currently in the right zone. So what you want to do is reach out to any local insurance agent or the flood insurance guru and have them run what's called a zone determination. And what that does is it's a determination to see what flood zone you're currently in. You want to check this every year, because FEMA does do a lot of flood map changes. So for example, if you don't have a mortgage on your house, you may not even know that your flood zone changed because you're not being notified. The only way you're going to know is maybe if it's in a local newspaper or a local city council. But if you have a mortgage, you're generally going to get a letter in the mail from them. Or if you have some kind of additional interest on the property, you're going to get some kind of letter in the mail from them. So if you've got questions about how to get a refund when it comes to your flood insurance, how to maybe get your zone changed, or are you overpaying? Is there a way to get some of that money back? Please reach out to us, floodinsuranceguru.com. Go to our YouTube or our Facebook channels, The Flood Insurance Guru, where we do daily flood educational videos, or you can give us a call, 205-451-4294. You can also simply click down on the link below, and we'd be happy to walk you through some different scenarios that might be able to help you significantly when it comes to your flood insurance. Thank you.